Hi, welcome to the Yale University Art Gallery in New Haven, Connecticut. Come on in and have a seat. This is Stories in Art. Please feel free to pause the video whenever you'd like to get a closer look at the artwork. Enjoy!
Welcome to Stories in Art at the Yale University Art Gallery. My name is Hannah. The story I'm telling today is one of Aesop's fables. Today we're going to be using a version of this story to help us look more closely at this print from the Yale University Art Gallery's collection. This artwork is called an etching, and it's titled The Ant and the Grasshopper. It's part of a series of pictures of Aesop's fables by Wenceslas Haller, who lived in Bohemia, which is now modern-day Czech Republic in Europe. In the Czech Republic today, this same artist is known by his Czech name, Václav Haller. Before we start the story, let's take a close look at the image. Can you find anything that you recognize? What things from nature did you find? Does this look like somewhere that you've been before? Now that we've looked at the artwork, I will tell you a story that goes with it. This story has been adapted from a fable by a man named Aesop. He lived in Greece a long, long time ago, and he wrote fables, which are short stories that have some sort of message to help us learn about life. One bright day in late autumn, families of ants were bustling about in the warm sunshine. The ants had worked all summer long to gather food for the coming winter. To find food, they left their homes in the biggest, oldest tree in the forest that was right along the river bank, and they wandered to the fields. During the winter time, the ants could not leave this home because it was too cold, so they needed to gather as many months' worth of food as they could before the air got cool. On this day, the ants were hard at work, carrying grains one by one to their home in the tree. The tree was so old and so big that it could hold the entire community. Over time, the tree had developed an opening at the base of the trunk that was like a big archway into their home. Now, to you and me, a piece of grain, like a single piece of rice, is very, very tiny. But to a small ant, this was hard work. They lifted the grains onto their back, and they had to walk them through the arch into their house in this tree trunk for storage, one grain at a time. The ants went back and forth, slowly but surely, transporting hundreds of pieces of grain that they had collected into their home. While they were working, a grasshopper jumped up with a wooden fiddle under his arm. The ants, looking up just for a moment from their task, recognized the grasshopper. He was well known for playing lively fiddle music. When he played his fiddle, all the animals in the forest would gather around and dance to the music. His fiddle music was so joyous that even the flowers and grass leaves swayed along to the rhythm of the music. The grasshopper began playing in springtime, celebrating the arrival of summer's beautiful blooms and sweet, warm air. And he continued to play his fiddle and spread the joy through the forest all summer long, even into autumn, when the ants were finishing their harvesting for the winter. This grasshopper's favorite autumn song went like this. When this grasshopper approached the ants on this autumn day, he looked tired and hungry. He had been playing his fiddle all day long. "That's a lot of food you're storing," he cried. "Do you have a few grains to spare?" "What?" cried the ants in surprise. Haven't you stored anything away for the winter?" "I didn't have time to store away any food," replied the grasshopper, who felt rather guilty. The ants were shocked. How could the grasshopper be so thoughtless? They muttered to themselves. Then the largest ant came out with a crown on her head to hear what was happening. All the other ants grew silent in the queen's presence. "I was so busy making music before I knew it that the summer was gone," the grasshopper continued. "I played my music for all the animals of the forest. When you were all done with your work each day, you joined me in dancing in the evenings. Surely you remember the swoosh of the sweet-smelling grass, and maybe the flit of the fireflies swaying with us in the thick summer air?" The ants talked among themselves. The queen pointed out that she did enjoy the grasshopper's music every night. Each winter, while they stayed in their homes, they longed for summer nights, with vibrant tunes and festive laughter shared by all the forest animals. The work they had done to store food was important, but the grasshopper had been doing important work too. He brought all of their friends, the other forest animals and insects, together and created a wonderful and loving community with his music making. "Okay," the ants replied. "We will share our grain store with you." The queen instructed the ants to bring a portion of the grain to the grasshopper. The grasshopper thanked each of the ants and the queen and set off to store his share of the grain in his own home along the riverbank. That night, the forest animals got together for one last summer dance, lit by a gently waning moon and the glittering light of fireflies. It was their best celebration yet. And so, the ants and the grasshopper both learned there is a time for work and there is a time for play. Now that you've heard the story, let's look more closely at this etching. What new details are you noticing? I notice that it looks like the ants and the grasshoppers are having a conversation. I also notice that the artwork is made up of lots of little lines. These lines are placed closely together to make things look darker and further apart, to make them look lighter or even further away. In the story you just heard, the grasshopper loved to play the fiddle, and the ants carried their grain to their home. If you have a pencil and a piece of paper at your home, try drawing animals doing their work. Maybe try drawing a grasshopper playing or holding a fiddle. Try drawing an ant carrying food. Or draw an animal playing a different instrument. It could be a bear playing the drums, a dog playing the xylophone, a bird playing the flute. Use your imagination, and we'd love to see what you make.
Thank you for joining us for Stories in Art at the Yale University Art Gallery. We hope you enjoyed listening and looking with our storytellers.